There is a quiet assumption that drifts into our thinking, somewhere around age 60. It is the idea that health problems at this stage of life are mostly a matter of bad luck or bad genes. You might hear about a friend who was always active, always careful, and then suddenly faced a serious diagnosis. And a small voice in the back of your mind whispers that you could be next no matter what you do. That voice is not telling you the whole truth. The reality, and I have watched this unfold in thousands of patient conversations over 2 decades, is that the body after 60 is not fragile. It is responsive. It is still listening to what you do every single day. And many of the health threats that look like lightning strikes are actually slow building outcomes of small, everyday behaviors that most of us never think to question. In this video, I want to walk you through 7 of these behaviors, not to alarm you, but to give you the same quiet clarity I try to give the person sitting across from me in the exam room. These are not dramatic, life-overhauling warnings. They are the subtle, often invisible daily patterns that quietly increase your health risks. And more importantly, what you can do starting tonight to gently turn them around. Before we get to the first one, if you find it helpful to understand the quiet reasons behind your health instead of just being handed a prescription, please hit subscribe and give this a like. It is a simple thing, but it genuinely shapes what I cover next. And in the comments, I would love to know which of these 7 surprised you the most as we go through them. Let us get into it. The first behavior is something almost everyone does without a second thought. And it happens in the very first hour of your day. It is drinking coffee before you drink water. Now, I am not here to take your coffee away. In my own life, the morning cup is a ritual I look forward to. But what most people do not realize is what happened inside their body while they were sleeping. Over those 7 or 8 hours, you lost water with every breath you exhaled. You did not take a single sip. By the time your eyes open, your blood is thicker, your cells are slightly dehydrated, and your kidneys have been conserving fluid all night. When you stand up and pour that coffee first thing, you are introducing a diuretic, a substance that tells your kidneys to release even more water into a system that is already running low. For someone in their 40s, the body can often shrug this off. After 60, the margin is thinner. Dehydration in an older adult does not just mean a dry mouth. It is one of the most common reversible causes of sudden confusion, dizziness, a fall, and a urinary tract infection. I have seen it more times than I can count. A patient comes in feeling foggy, unsteady, sometimes even a little disoriented, and the family is terrified. We run the tests, and the core problem is simply not enough water. Starting your morning with 12 to 16 ounces of plain water, before the coffee, before the tea, before anything else, is one of the lowest effort, highest reward changes you can make. Keep a glass or a bottle right on your nightstand so it is the first thing your hand reaches for. It wakes up your brain, it gets your blood moving, and it rehydrates every single cell before you ask your body to do anything else. The second everyday behavior is something that feels like a virtue. It is sitting down to rest and then not getting up again for hours. After retirement, the natural rhythm of the day shifts. The built-in movement of a commute, of walking across a building, of standing to talk to a colleague, all of that quietly disappears. What replaces it is often long, unbroken stretches in a favorite chair, reading, watching television, scrolling on a phone. And from the outside, it looks peaceful. Inside the body, something very different is happening. When your large leg muscles are still for hours, they stop acting like a pump that helps move blood back up toward your heart. Blood can begin to pool in the lower legs. Over weeks and months, this increases the risk of a deep vein thrombosis, a clot that can form silently and then travel to the lungs. The muscles themselves also start to change. After age 60, we lose muscle mass at a faster rate than we did in our 40s, and long periods of sitting accelerate that loss. The muscle that remains becomes less sensitive to insulin, which nudges your blood sugar upward over time. The fix is not a gym membership or a strenuous workout. It is simply breaking the cycle. Set a quiet timer on your phone or watch for every 45 minutes. When it goes off, stand up, walk to the kitchen and back. Do a few gentle leg lifts while holding the back of a chair. Stretch your calves. The goal is not to exercise. The goal is simply to contract those big leg muscles and get the blood moving again. 1 minute of movement for every hour of sitting can completely change the risk profile I just described. The third behavior sneaks up on people who eat very little during the day. It is saving most of your calories for one large evening meal. The thinking makes sense on the surface. You are not very hungry at breakfast, you have a light lunch, and then dinner becomes the main event where you finally sit down and eat a full plate. The problem is that after 60, your body's ability to process a large glucose load all at once becomes less efficient. When you eat a big meal, especially one rich in carbohydrates, your blood sugar rises, and your pancreas has to release a significant amount of insulin to bring it back down. Doing this in the evening, when your body is naturally winding down and your insulin sensitivity is at its lowest point in the day, means that sugar stays elevated for hours while you sleep. This fuels that high morning fasting number so many people ask me about, and over time, it strains the cardiovascular system and promotes fat storage around the abdomen. A gentler pattern is to shift more of your eating toward the front of the day. Even a small protein-rich breakfast, something as simple as a hard-boiled egg or some Greek yogurt, signals to your metabolism that the day has begun. A moderate lunch and then a lighter dinner, that you finish at least 2.5 to 3 hours before you go to bed, gives your body time to clear the glucose and settle into a true resting state overnight. It is not about restriction. It is about working with the clock your body is already on. The fourth behavior is one I rarely see discussed outside of a doctor's visit. It is the gradual loss of your social world that happens so slowly. You almost do not notice it, and its health impact is as real as smoking or high blood pressure. By the time someone is in their 60s and beyond, the social structures that once surrounded them have often thinned. A career ends, and the daily conversations with coworkers vanish. Children live far away. Friends move or pass on. What remains are stretches of quiet that can stretch into days. The body registers this loneliness as a state of low-grade threat. It quietly raises levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, which over time increases inflammation, raises blood pressure, and weakens the immune system. I have watched patients whose lab numbers were stubbornly stuck until they found a community, and then the numbers began to shift. This is not about being an extrovert or going to crowded parties. It is about one or two genuine connections that happen regularly. A weekly phone call at the same time every Sunday. A walking group that meets on Wednesday mornings. Volunteering at a local library or a food pantry where people expect to see you. The key ingredient is consistency. It tells your nervous system, I am not alone, and the body responds to that signal with calmer, healthier physiology. The fifth behavior is something that seems completely unrelated to long-term health. It is going to sleep at a different time every night. After a busy life of schedules and alarms, the freedom of retirement can feel like a release. You stay up late watching a movie one night, turn in early the next, sleep in on a rainy morning, and all of it feels harmless. The problem is that your body has a master internal clock, the circadian rhythm that runs on a predictable 24-hour cycle. This clock regulates not just sleep, but the release of hormones, the timing of digestion, and even the repair of DNA inside your cells. When you shift your bedtime and wake time by 2 or 3 hours across the week, it is like giving your body a mild case of jet lag repeatedly. After 60, this misalignment has been linked in large, observational studies to a higher risk of high blood sugar, weight gain, and even cognitive decline. The most protective thing you can do is remarkably simple. Pick a bedtime and a wake time, and stick to them within a 30-minute window, 7 days a week. It sounds rigid, but the result is the opposite. You give your body a steady rhythm, and it responds with deeper sleep, a sharper mind during the day, and a metabolism that works more predictably. The sixth behavior takes us back to the kitchen. It is not what you are eating, but what you have slowly stopped eating. Over time, many people settle into a narrow list of familiar foods, and one of the biggest things that falls off that list is protein. Portions shrink, meat becomes harder to chew, appetite naturally decreases, and so day after day, the body receives less of the raw material it needs to hold on to its muscle. This is a quiet crisis I see in my practice constantly. After 60, the body enters a state where it is naturally less efficient at building muscle. If you do not provide enough dietary protein, muscle loss accelerates. This loss is not a cosmetic issue. Your muscles are your metabolic engine. They are what keep you strong enough to stand up from a chair without help, to carry groceries, to catch yourself if you trip. When muscle mass drops too low, the risk of a life-altering fall climbs sharply, and the body's ability to fight off illness weakens. The target I give my own patients is to aim for a good source of protein at every meal, spread throughout the day. A handful of almonds and some cottage cheese at breakfast, a palm-sized piece of fish or chicken at lunch, some lentils or beans at dinner. Spreading it out helps your body absorb and use the protein more effectively than eating it all at once. This single shift, prioritizing protein in a gentle, consistent way, can preserve years of independence. The seventh and final behavior is one that feels the most personal. It is the habit of minimizing your own pain. By the time someone reaches their 60s, they have often lived through decades of pushing through. A stiff knee, a sore hip, a shoulder that does not quite lift all the way. A persistent sadness that is written off as just getting older. There is a quiet stoicism that says, I do not want to be a bother, or, this is just what happens at my age. I need to be very clear with you about something. Pain is not a normal consequence of aging. It is a signal. And when you ignore that signal, you do not just live with discomfort. You begin to move differently to avoid the pain. And that compensation slowly reshapes your body. You favor one hip and the other knee starts to wear down. You stop lifting your arm and the shoulder freezes. You withdraw from the things you love, and isolation begins to set in. This chain reaction can be completely interrupted if the initial pain is addressed early. A physical therapist can often resolve a movement problem in weeks that would take years to become disabling. A conversation with a trusted doctor about low mood or persistent worry can open the door to treatments that are far more effective than they were a generation ago. Suffering in silence is the only intervention that has a 0% success rate. If something hurts, if something feels off, bring it into the light. Tell someone. Ask for help. Your body is speaking to you, and after 60, listening to it is one of the most protective things you will ever do. Let me tell you about a man I will call Robert. He came to me at 67, recently retired, and he was quietly frightened. He felt foggy in the mornings, his knees ached, his blood pressure was creeping up, and he had started turning down invitations because he did not have the energy. He told me he thought he was just watching the slow decline everyone talked about. We looked at his day together. Coffee first, no water until noon, long hours in his recliner reading, a light lunch, then a huge dinner at 8 p.m. bedtime anywhere from 10 to midnight, very little protein, and a shoulder that had been hurting for 2 years that he never mentioned to anyone. Over the next 4 months, we did not use a single new prescription. He started with a glass of water by his bed. He set a timer and stood up every hour. He moved his larger meal to lunch and ate a lighter dinner. He called his brother every Tuesday evening at the same time. A ritual they both began to protect. He started putting a scoop of protein powder in his morning oatmeal and eating a hard-boiled egg with it. He went to a physical therapist for his shoulder, and within 6 weeks, the pain was 80% gone. His blood pressure came down. His morning clarity returned. The fog lifted. What he told me at his follow-up has stayed with me ever since. He said, I did not realize how much control I still had. I thought the ship had already sailed. And that is the quiet thread I want to leave you with tonight. The body you're living in after 60 is not a machine that is simply wearing out. It is a living system that is still listening, still adapting, still responding to the small choices you make every day. The 7 behaviors we walked through are not a list of things to be afraid of. They are an invitation to look at your own day with fresh eyes and ask, what is one small thing I could shift tonight? Maybe it is the glass of water on the nightstand. Maybe it is setting the bedtime a little steadier. Maybe it is making that phone call you have been putting off. Or simply telling someone about the pain you have been carrying alone. These are not dramatic gestures. They are quiet, daily decisions that compound over time into resilience, into independence, into years that do not just last longer, but feel fuller. You have more influence than you were led to believe. I hope you walk away from this video feeling that in your bones. Thank you for spending this time with me. If something in this video resonated with you or reminded you of your own experience, I would genuinely like to hear about it in the comments. Our shared stories are often the most powerful part of this whole conversation. Take care of yourself tonight, and I will see you again soon.